Don was born in Marlin, Texas, along with his brother Ron. He had a twin brother. When the boys were young, his family moved to Houston, Texas, and Don grew up in a very loving Christian family. He had such a happy childhood. Don went through the Houston schools and he graduated from Jeff Davis. And while growing up in high school, Don was very athletic and he excelled in many sports. He loved baseball, and when he was in Davis, he was on the varsity football team and he also ran track. And even as a young man, Don was always very well liked and very admired. His senior year, he was senior favorite, and he was also voted runner-up for most handsome. After high school, Don attended Blinn Junior College for about a year, and then he went and enlisted in the Coast Guard, and he was stationed in Grand Marais, Michigan at the Coast Guard station for about 4 years. And when he was discharged, he moved back to Texas and he moved to Pasadena. He started attending Central Church of Christ, which is where his grandmother attended, and that was also my hometown congregation. And after I graduated from college, I moved back home and I also started attending Central again. And it was so obvious that Don was interested in me because every time I would pass by him, his head would do a 180, and it was quite amusing. But then one night after church, I was walking to the parking lot, and Don's car happened to be parked right beside mine, and he was standing by his car. So we got to talking, he asked me to go get a Coke, and then we started dating. And we dated for several months, and then Don asked me to marry him. And who couldn't say yes to this good-natured Christian man that was so funny and witty, and he was so kind and considerate, and he loved my family and my family loved his. So we got married. And shortly after we were married, Don went to work for Crown Central Petroleum. That later became PRSI and later was bought out by Petrobras. And he worked for those refineries for 41 years. And while he was still working at the refineries, he decided to go back to school and he got his real estate broker's license. He even helped many people from Southeast find a home. Don and I had two wonderful daughters, Ashley and Amy. And when Amy was 4 and I was actually pregnant with Ashley, we placed our membership at Southeast, and that was in 1986. Don's always had a strong faith. He's always trusted in God. He's always been very active in the church. At one time when he was at Southeast, he was a deacon over the greeters ministry, and that was just such a perfect fit for him. He was so friendly, so welcoming, and always had a smile on his face. He always shared his faith with others whenever possible. He always tried to be a good example, especially to his children. Don was always writing notes from Bible lessons or from the sermons. I opened up a drawer of his nightstand and I saw a business card, and on the back of it was a scripture. I opened up a book and there was a scripture written on a piece of paper, and that just made me smile. Don had so many hobbies throughout his life. He loved to fish and would go fishing with neighbors. He was so artistic. He had never had any art lessons, but he could replicate nearly anything that he saw. Don loved Christmas, loved decorating for Christmas. He would decorate the outside of the house so beautifully with lights and all of his little special touches. He enjoyed so much driving his 1968 Shelby Mustang. He would show it off to anybody that would look at it. The girls knew Don was coming. They would hear this loud noise about 2 blocks over. He really loved that car. During the last years of his life, especially the last year, he really enjoyed just the simple things. Just sitting out in the yard, watching the ducks fly over and listening to them. And he also just loved listening to his music. But Don's favorite things to do, no matter what stage of life he was in, was to be with friends and family. He loved his daughters so much, and he loved his son-in-laws, Reuben and Andy, but he adored Emerson and Avery, his grandchildren. And it was so sad. In the last years of his life, sometimes he would ask me, "Linda, do you think I'll live to see Avery get married?" Or he'd say another time, Linda, do you think I'll live to see Emerson graduate from college? He would just ask me questions like that were so touching. He just loved his family so much, and he just did not want to miss any milestone in their lives. He was such a loving and devoted and thoughtful father and husband, and ever since the girls were little, he always brought them a bouquet of flowers on Valentine's. And someone at church once told me, Don told them that the happiest and saddest days in his life were when his daughters got married. He was truly the best girl dad, and he was always so thoughtful, and he would send me flowers on our anniversary, and it was always like, for the milestones, 20 roses for 20th, 30 for 30th, and 40 for the 40th. And that last one, the 40th, was so big. He was always so helpful and selfless. He had so many fine qualities. He was so good-natured. He was so kind. He was tender-hearted, and he always looked for the good in others. Even during the last year of Don's life, he had such a wonderful disposition. He was dealing with Alzheimer's, but he always kept such a positive attitude and would do whatever you ask of him. He was just the sweetest, most appreciative person. He was always thanking me for the least little thing I would do for him. I'd go by his chair many a time, and he'd grab my hand and just give me the biggest smile. He was just such a sweet, sweet person. Don was the love of my life, and he felt the same. We would have been married 50 years in April. I felt God truly answered my prayers years ago when he sent Don as my husband. We were perfect for each other. Don was a very rare and precious person who I miss every day. It's still so hard. I just miss everything about him. He was just such a good-natured, sweet, kind, loving person, and always told you how much he loved you. I just miss everything about him.